We are live.
We are.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So, how's it going?
It's pretty good. It's been
Nice.
a
Oh,
long day. Oh, you need to wiggle your mouse.
yeah, I do.
All
Yeah,
right.
it has been a long day. I think every week, and I think we're both implicated in this. This is as much my end as yours. Every week, when I've put up the um, post for the replay of the episode on objc-retain.com, I've said, so next week we're going to our other schedule, which is, and then I've said what that schedule is, and then we have changed it in the intervening time. So I'm going to give up on scheduling this. So we start at somewhere after 1800 UTC on a Wednesday, usually Wednesday, but sometimes Tuesday, and we finish at somewhere before 2100, but sometimes a little bit after. That is our
Yeah.
schedule.
I think that's pretty reasonable. My schedule has been less flexible lately, and although yours tends to be more stable than mine, but that's a recent development, I think.
Yeah, mine is mostly all right, except that I have some sort of local political commitments that just appear, and so there's one thing a month that is on a definite schedule, and that doesn't interrupt us at all, and so I have deliberately chosen this Wednesday stream to not to not conflict with that. But there are then extra sort of like rallies or educational talks, some of which are like um, mandatory attendance. If they're public meetings, then everybody involved has to be on there just to kind of give the sort of weight of numbers to the presentation. And like so sometimes actually it's not that I find out in short notice. It's that this pandemic has made me absolutely rubbish at diary management. So it's a good job that we're working on SimpleAgenda later in the stream.
Right.
But yeah, like I have just assumed that nothing is happening, and like I do this at work as well. Like it happened today. I was on I was like finally getting into the back of this problem I've been having, where like our sort of cloud deployment is so complex I can't even work out where different parts of the application are defined, and broke the back of this. I was like working on it, and then switched to or didn't even switch to Slack. I paged through the virtual desktops on my computer and went past the Slack workspace on my way to something else and saw that I had a DM and checked it, and it was someone saying, "Are you joining the engineering meeting?" Which had started like 20 minutes early, and I just completely forgotten that this was on because I just got into this mindset of like, I'm in my home on my own, like basically all the time. Uh, Nothing is changing. I don't need to worry about events or time.
I have a separate problem. I live and die by my calendar.
Mm.
And I put even like dumb shit in my calendar if I have a particularly full day. And, but I have more than one calendar that I'm unable to, because of corporate restrictions or
Mm.
whatever, that I'm unable to get into my calendar.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So I have at least four different calendars spread across two different computers, and I have no way of aggregating them into
Mm.
one place. And new items can pop up into any one of those calendars without my knowledge, because someone in Outlook,
Yeah.
someone can just add you as a required participant in their meeting. And so I have to so I have this constant just calendar anxiety,
Mm.
because I don't have access to all of my calendars from all of my places. And yeah, so I guess it is stream relevant that we are working on simple agenda,
Mm.
because, as I said, I live and die by my calendar, and it is, if I forget to put something, if this stream wasn't in my calendar, I would just simply not show up half the time.
Yeah, so
Or
I also have the stream in my calendar, so I remember about it.
And I did have one situation where I accidentally deleted one of the streams from our calendar.
Hmm.
And I remembered about the stream when you texted me and said, okay, I'm sitting at my desk now. And I looked and realized we were starting in 10 minutes. Amusingly and thankfully, that was one of the streams that set up really well.
Yeah,
But we don't always have that luxury. Sometimes we have 10 minutes of stream prep or 10 minutes of fuckery with 40 minutes of prep, and sometimes we have 40 minutes of prep of fuckery with 10 minutes of prep.
yeah.
So, but we seem to be getting into some kind of regular cadence on this, so that's good.
This one seems to be going well. What I try to do is do any setup I need to do when we finish the recording the episode. So, for example, I had two things on my because we're on FreeBSD 13 here, and we've been sort of tracking the release candidate cycle since the beta. Um, since beta 1, I think. Um, every week at the end of the stream, I run FreeBSD update, and then I try to do whatever it is that we've just done on the stream and fix any problems. So we're always like 1 week ahead in software update land. Um, and the other thing I had to do was I've published. You'll see here people who want to use a fully free experience on the stream can watch the stream at this URL instead of that URL. And I realized that while all of the components that make that thing are all fully free software, I never actually published the 9 lines of HTML and 1 line of JavaScript that makes that thing a reality. And that is now published, licensed under the AGPL version 3, and so, link in the player itself. So it genuinely is a fully free system, and I did that um, immediately after the stream finished, so that it was set up for the next time. Because otherwise, like, other things get in the way, or I don't pay attention to how much time I've got, and it would be now, and I'd be going, oh yeah, I needed to actually update the operating system or whatever.
I'm not sure if Luna decided that she doesn't like your voice, or if she decides that stream time is the appropriate time to bark for treats. Um, but that's what she's doing. That's why I was muted.
Okay.
I had to yell at her. Yeah, and so I think that's really useful for people. I know Matthew Scala turns up sometimes, often, and he's very interested in streaming with fully free software.
Hmm.
And there are even some other options. I think you pointed me at Owncast, which I looked at briefly, which looks like an interesting solution that other people might be interested in looking at as well. And
Yeah, so Owncast looks like much lower sort of setup cost than this thing. I have enough sort of sysadmin experience. I don't mind throwing up a Linode and configuring some Nginx on it. So the stream is actually streamed through Nginx using the Nginx RTMP plugin. Matthew Scala says he's hearing repeats in the audio sometimes on both of us. I wonder whether that is. I don't hear anything back in my monitors, but I'm wondering whether it is related to the call that we have.
that is possible. I'm not hearing any repeats either.
At irregular intervals, 1 or 2 seconds will be played twice. Okay, so it could just be that something with the video encoding. I don't know what to do about that. I will see if I can see anything that is evidently at fault. I've.
It is worth asking if Matthew is. It is worth asking. I'm not sure if Matthew is watching via Twitch or via the RTMP stream.
Matthew is, well, certainly chatting on Twitch. Um, because his chat is being broadcast via the bridge to chat.objc-retain.com, which is the Mattermost instance. Okay, so that is on Twitch, but UG19 presumably is on Twitch as well and hasn't heard the repeats. I honestly don't know what to do about that.
Okay.
I'm looking at whether there are any encoding problems in OBS. So the other URL is rtmp.objc-retain.com if you want to try connecting to the HLS player.
Okay. So, let's see here. This is the part of the stream where we talk shit,
Yeah.
and you mentioned an appropriate thing for that. But I don't remember what you suggested.
Yeah.
Oh, right, I do remember. I was telling you my story about a friend of mine who was a vegetarian, and
Okay. So UG19 just said there's some sort of echo. You're on a laptop through the laptop speakers, aren't you?
I am. I bet it's my hands over the microphone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Well, actually,
Okay.
it's still happening. It's my voice being fed back into the microphone on your laptop, which I can hear over the call.
Yep, I can grab a headset. 1 second.
Okay, sure. So I will set the scene then. Yeah, what I wanted to talk about at the start of this stream was something we picked up a little bit last week. Was this idea that software freedom is only a part of something that seems like a valuable overall goal, which is software autonomy. The idea that people or rather, like online autonomy, the idea that people in the like the online community are equal and justly served members of that community who have their own sort of will and their own ability to act, which is partly under threat from lack of software freedom and people not being able to control the way in which they engage with their own computers, but also partly under threat by the sort of monopolistic ownership of the online space by large corporate actors, right? Even if you use completely free software to access Facebook, and Facebook use completely free software to manage Facebook, you've still got a power imbalance and a lack of autonomy in the in the interaction between an individual on Facebook and Facebook itself. And what that leads to is the idea that sort of software freedom in the kind of let's have arguments about what license we're going to use sense of software freedom is a fairly limiting way to look at the responsibilities that software professionals have to their communities of users. Now, there are other aspects of autonomy that some of the proprietary vendors do do better at. Like I would argue that Apple's current focus on privacy, coupled with its current focus on like simplicity of setup and ease of use, and like unified computing environment, is actually a compelling argument for autonomy, even though they aren't, by and large, proponents of software freedom. And so we were going to talk about how GNUstep is both a tool for software freedom in that it is itself free software and it is copyleft free software, and a lot of the apps are also copyleft free software. So you get the ability to use a completely free computer experience, but also the fact that they are typically consistently designed with the Apple Human Interface guidelines because they're designed by people who are sort of from the next step of the Mac world, and so you get the rest of the autonomy. You get the sort of empowerment and education side that comes from understanding how these applications work. So actually, GNUstep applications for the Mac are improving improving the landscape for Mac users, even though the Mac itself is not a free platform. That was what we were going to talk about.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect.
No
All right.
echo as well.
Oh, that's excellent. So so the anecdote I was going to talk about was a friend of mine years ago was a vegetarian. I reason by anecdotes. I think that's a fairly human thing to do. And I told him one day, I said, "Look, I know that you feel very strongly about this, but I'm not going. I'm not going to be converted. But I will when we go out for dinner together. Eat whatever you tell me to." And he said, "That's a win for my cause because that is less meat being consumed by you." And I think that it's a win for our cause if people on non-free platforms are using and understanding the benefits of free software as well. And through this stream, we can show people you can have access to this great fully free software, and maybe that is sort of a gateway drug, you know. Maybe that encourages them to look for other ways to increase their own freedom, or look at, hey, what are these free software hippies really trying to tell me? Instead of, you should use this program that's awesome. Because there's a lot of great free software out there. I mean, we make extensive use of OBS, and that's great free software. One of the things that I noticed recently when I was looking for CAD software, I was using FreeCAD, which is really great, and but it's a bit clunky and hard to use at times. But it's fully extensible, and so. But I decided, well, I've got this big CAD project coming up, and I'm going to look at the commercial alternatives to see if my life would be improved by using the commercial alternatives. And so I got the free trials, the fully extended free trials of AutoCAD and Rhino and ArchiCAD and a few other things. And what I realized is actually software has become such garbage in service of these subscription models that in many cases the free software is not only freer and more respecting of its users, it's also technically better. I think that OBS I don't think there's a non-free alternative to OBS that is technically better than OBS. I'm completely convinced that there is no non-free alternative to OBS that is better than OBS. And if we can get people to understand, hey, this thing that you're using is great, and it's free software, and it's freedom respecting, then we've won. Even if they're not, buying LibreBoot laptops with Geeks SD and running GNUstep full time, we at least have the opportunity to bring them into the fold.
So
it's going to plug in.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just back on the audio issues. I just noticed that the streaming computer had switched between the Ethernet and the Wi-Fi, and I've just stopped it from doing that. And so that may have been a cause of some sort of choppiness on the video. So hopefully that's improved that side of things. I think there are there definitely are people who live a completely free software life, and obviously RMS is one of them. I think probably Leah Rowe is another. Bradley Kuhn, and I could carry on listing, and the list would not get particularly long. That's only because I mostly don't know people, but I would expect that most people who are at FOSDEM every year are not free software purists. I would expect
No,
most of them
yeah,
have
it's
mobile phones,
and
and
MacBook Pros.
well, yeah. So there has been sort of increase of Macs around, but like they have computers that have non-free BIOS, they have mobile phones that have non-free baseband, um, and that there's there is a level of um, like ideological purity and commitment to this idea of freedom that you have to like invest into. And I'm using Amiga Gamer 1200. Um, I'm using the word invest in like in a knowingly ironic sense because we're also talking about freedom. It's not that in some extent, to some extent, it is that you're sort of paying for things. Like you are going to buy a computer that has a free BIOS, or you are going to like pay for um, other hardware like sort of Wi-Fi dongles and so on that don't require binary firmware blobs, whatever. But also, I mean, time investment and lifestyle investment. Like you're going to choose to change the way that you interact with society such that you only interact through these tools. And that is not open to a lot of people and not compelling to a lot of people as well. And can potentially put people off the whole idea. Like if you saw uh, sort of if you saw like the um, stereotypical view in the 70s or 60s rather of the sort of dropout of society, peace loving stoner hippie, and didn't associate with all of those aspects of that culture, then you might be put off the like anti-war movement because you don't think that you like identify with those kinds of people. Um, Obviously, the stakes are very different in like the anti-war movement in the 70s and the end of the 60s and the free software movement now. Free software is a fundamentally sort of civil rights based political expression in a particularly limited medium, um, and one that has by and large mostly affected the privileged, one that hasn't really sort of gone down the stack as it were into into the rest of society. So like that comparison is not an entirely fair comparison, but the idea that which actually probably makes the argument stronger. Like why would you go into this sort of digital hobo lifestyle for something that's fundamentally not that important to a lot of people? So if what you can do is show that there are improvements to be made locally, that you can sort of change bits of the way that you work, and things will be better as a result, then like that that's an easier thing to understand and an easier chasm to cross than like looking at how Mako Hill uses a computer and how I use a computer and going right. I want to get all the way from here to over there. Why do I want to go over there?
Yeah, and there's a lot of I think that the open source shift from free software echoed a lot of that in terms of let's look at the purely pragmatic issues. And I definitely don't want to go back there because I don't think it's useful to say, look, you can have a whole bunch of this stuff for free and at zero cost, and it's pretty good. I don't think that there's a
No,
lot of
because
utility.
the monopoly capitalists can afford to do that as well. Like Apple can afford to give you
Right.
a free mail client and a free calendar app. So the idea that we've got a free mail client and a free calendar app, that in itself is not a compelling reason to adopt software freedom.
Exactly. And a lot of the ways that that sort of Linux, and I am specifically talking about Linux, uh, enabled this was that in a lot of applications, Linux-based systems were superior to to the commercial alternatives. That's one of the things that happened, and I think that we should focus on moral superiority is nice, but technical and usability superiority is going to win every single time. And I think that we can. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of good to be gained from focusing on that.
Yeah, and then you get the chance to talk about the moral victories after you've sort of won the pragmatic victories. And
Exactly.
in the world of sort of in the world of like basic computing software for the Mac, I think that there is and it's a difficult line to draw very. Sorry, it's not a difficult line to draw. It's a difficult line to tread particularly well, where Apple's stuff is by and large very very easy to use and very easy to understand, and also very limited to the way in which Apple think that you want to work. Um, and like particularly the mail client, there's sort of limited ways in which you can sort of order the messages in the client, um, work with replies. Now with the full screen mode, it goes into a sort of half and half thing where you've got your inbox on your left and the message you're composing on your right. And if you want to like look at a different message in order to review its contents or copy and paste it into that message, that becomes very difficult to manage. And like there's there is a level of increased capability that needs to be gained without losing out through increased complexity, and that is a really hard thing to manage. It's not going to be an easy step to make, but I could imagine, for example, if we had a simple agenda that made it very easy to sync over Nextcloud, and there was a Nextcloud calendar app for the iPhone, and then you'd have a syncing experience that's nearly as it's never going to be as well integrated as iCloud is on Apple's platform because Apple own both of those things, but something that is easy enough and then gives you the benefit that you are in control of all of your data, and so you don't have the thing where Apple upgrade the calendar app on one platform and you can't access it anymore on the other, as it has happened with reminders in the Big Sur upgrade, as happened with like mail even on in a few cases. And you've got that sort of safety of mind, and you've got the capability to do things that Apple don't think are worth them implementing. Like I say, it's going to be a very difficult line to tread, but I think that is one of the opportunities where the fact that we have all of this amazing free software from GNUstep, but also can cater to this like existing and significantly larger community of computer users, plays there are strengths on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we can focus on a few apps that are just really good, and I want to focus on having just really good apps, regardless of which platform I'm on, then those, to me, an app that's really good that's based on GNUstep, and an app that's really good if it's really good and based on GNUstep, and it also runs on Macs and Windows computers as well, that's a win.
Hmm.
Amiga Gamer 1200 says they moved to open source because they didn't feel they had control of their computer or privacy in its use, and has similar views to online services. I completely agree with that. This is a thing that I struggle with constantly. I try to live a completely Google free life, um, because I think that Google is the bad guy, and I'm very careful about how I curate my interaction with Google-based services, and if I have to, and Facebook and things like that, because I think that those are um, there's a larger impediment to freedom by depending on those services, I think, than there is by whether you have access to the source code or not. I have the source code to Firefox, and I can build my own version of Firefox and I can run that, but I'm never going to do it um, because Firefox is a massive application that has a whole bunch of garbage that I don't want. Um, but I have the source code and have made use of the source code to a lot of other software that I use. And there's some software that I wish I had the source code to. Um, but the source code is useful to me, and but when there are multiple things that speak the same protocols, like for instance, SimpleAgenda is a great example of this. SimpleAgenda can talk to CalDAV, and it can talk to CardDAV, and it can read ICS files and so on. When it is a great application in its own right, people will use it regardless of whether they need to or not. And I think that's a thing that's worth focusing on. And one of the things that I hope that we're able to encourage on this stream.
So, I made reference earlier to the, the sort of limited and privileged access to the, to the bounty of software freedom. So Mov01 says there's still a bit of repeating and skipping in the video and the audio. Let me just check that this is actually connected to the Ethernet, which is through that cable that is doing the blinking lights. I'm going to do the dangerous thing, and I'm going to turn off the network and hope that that everything stays up. Yes, Stephen is still moving on the screen, so now it shouldn't. It should definitely stop hopping between networks, which is probably the one thing I can control at my end.
I can see on my end that your connection quality in the call goes down to red the last two times somebody complained about the repeating. So I suspect that the network connection moving might be the problem. So we hope that's fixed.
Yeah, I think I've done the one thing that is in my control. And Matthew Scarlett says they haven't had any repeats on the RTMP stream, so there you go. If you want to experience this as the directors intended, go to rtmp.objc-retain.com. So yeah, I was talking about the privileged access to the bounty of software freedom, by which I mean there's two things. One is what I've called open source before, which is where companies try to use the mechanism of open source and free software licensing in order to gain the freedom from competition, from other companies, which is basically now and you were talking about this before we went live. This is a situation that has now been entirely won by Amazon, because if anybody else's license is not amenable to Amazon using their thing, then Amazon just write the re-implementation of that thing. And because the free software community has never correctly engaged with the topic of software patents, there is no comeback for Amazon doing that. The other aspect of that privilege is that you have access to the source code of Firefox and could choose to review that and build that. Everybody else has got access to the source code of Firefox, and that is where that discussion ends. This has always been a stated part of the free software philosophy. I think it's mentioned in Free Software Free Society that you don't need to be able to use the source code in order to benefit from access to the source code. You need to be able to find someone who can use the source code and convince them, whether through like friendship or reciprocity or like financial transactions or whatever mechanism, to make the change that you would like to see, and you have the opportunity to not necessarily the means and not necessarily the capability, but the opportunity to make that change happen, regardless of what the original creator of the software thinks of that. And that is an incredibly, and I think largely deliberately unexplored area of the software freedom terrain. And it is one of the things that has meant that free software is actually this sort of like academic masturbation that FOSDEM attendees and Libra Planet attendees get to indulge in, that nobody else gets to indulge in, and that like Amazon and Facebook and the Silicon Valley and like West Coast American greats get to indulge in, and everybody else doesn't get to indulge in.
Yeah, I would love for it to be my job for people to decide to pay me to add the features that they want to see in free software. Very few people get to experience that. And we've seen a few things recently where, bug bounties, or I think on GitHub now, you can like say, I'm willing to pay $150 for this bug to be fixed. And every time I look into one of those, I see, oh yeah, you're willing to pay $150 to implement this feature that would take 3 full-time weeks. That is not a living wage in many societies in the world right now. And so it's not really a thing that is available to a lot of people. When I was doing a lot of free software advocacy in the late 90s, people would say, I'm not a programmer. Why do I care if I get the source code? And I would say, well, you're not a mechanic. Would you buy a car with the hood nailed shut? And they said, well, of course not, because I can always take my car to a mechanic. And I said, you can take your free software to a software developer.
Yeah, right.
But
there's long been that sort of view that any commercial software endeavor can easily be undercut by a student of computer science in an East European country where the cost of living is low, who gets the itch that they want to re-implement that software and just does it on their spare time, because then it's free both in terms of like financial outlay and in terms of sort of source code. But it's not the fact that the source code is free that actually enabled that. It's the fact that someone with a low cost of living put the effort in. So yeah, there is still this sort of unaddressed sense of privilege in the free software world that I think, again, the way that I would address this is come back to where the people are who are using software and say, what is it that would benefit you as more autonomous actors in an online environment? And this could be anything. Like one of Nextcloud's stickers they give out is like, "Who owns your nudes?" Any like revenge porn that's posted to the internet is a result of someone not having control over the presentation of their body online. That is a problem that can be solved, and that isn't even necessarily a free software problem. That is perhaps a sort of content distribution and ownership problem. But those are the kinds of problems that actually exist in society. Some guy with long hair and a beard wants to be able to turn on their Wi-Fi without having to put a little bit of x86 executable in a file on their E4FS file system isn't a problem that a lot of people experience.
Yeah, the reality is that you can run completely free software, and we do have that available to us, but the benefits of doing that are limited when your data, like I remember when Google Apps first came out and all of the people on the gmail.com addresses started popping up on the Debian mailing lists. And we were literally talking about software freedom and implementing software freedom. And some of these people were saying, "Oh, I run a fully free operating system. I run full free software." There's a package in Debian called VRMS, the Virtual Richard Matthew Stallman, and it looks on all the packages that are installed on your computer to see if any of them came from non-free sources. And people used to run that and brag about being fully free software while from their Gmail address. And that problem just got worse, where more and more things move into the browser and more things get pushed out to the cloud. That becomes a bigger and bigger problem.
Right, but again, it's not like that idea of like getting a perfect score in VRMS is not a problem that most people have. The problem that many people have is that they set up their email account with their ISP when they set up their ISP, and now their ISP has jacked up their prices, but they can't move ISPs because they would lose their email address, and that's the only way that people can contact them online. That is a real problem. Like, I remember a discussion we had when we were in Brussels last time, where we were talking about the software freedom thing and in relation to the John Deere tractors, and I think I was making the point that like farmers or farm workers, people using these tractors, don't have the problem that they don't have free software. They have the problem that it costs too much to service their tractor. And,
exactly.
We see it as well. There is a solution in giving them like right to repair and giving them access to the computer control system on the tractors, including its source code, so that it can be upgraded and maintained by any repair person. But that only means that we vicariously have the free software problem for them. It still doesn't mean that they have the free software problem.
Right. It was. I thought that the John Deere thing was going to be a massive turning point because you don't fuck with farmers and you don't fuck with their equipment. And I thought it was going to be a massive turning point. And I read a lot of farm and tractor magazines, and what I'm finding is actually it wasn't a turning point. People are still buying John Deere tractors. They're getting firmware from Ukrainian software developers,
right?
Which speaks to your previous point about people with a lower cost of living providing a service. But it didn't stop people from buying John Deere tractors. And the problem, for those of you that aren't aware, John Deere tractors have computers in them that connect and upload all the data about your farm to the cloud, and you have to pay them to get the data about your farm. And your neighbor at the competing farm can pay John Deere to get the data about your farm as well. And then there's a whole bunch of right to repair stuff. You have to take your John Deere to a John Deere dealership and things like that. That's also relevant. But it wasn't a turning point at all. People saw this problem and they said, well, this is the new world we live in. How do we get work done within the prison we've been placed? And that is this movement, shifting of priorities for the companies, and that being constantly at odds with the end users is the thing that offends me deeply, but I don't have a good solution to it aside from making more free software available to people that is good. And that's what we're trying to do here. And since I have a hard out in 45 minutes, we should probably start doing that.
Yep. Okay. Let's do that thing. I don't know, to what extent this became international news. Certainly, it would have done across most of mainland Europe, but maybe not even Scandinavia. Did you hear about the European Super League debacle? No. Okay. So the a number, I think it was 12 of the largest, by which I mean financially largest, football teams in Europe, and by Europe I mean the United Kingdom and Europe, decided that they wanted to start a sort of franchise model league like NHL or NFL or Major League Baseball or NBA, where they would compete in this league and they couldn't be promoted or relegated, and it would just be this like extra set of games so that they could make billions on the TV rights, on distribution rights, and this quickly became the single fastest mass movement of people and politicians in an anti-capitalist like demonstration in the UK that I've ever seen in my life, and that likely the UK has ever seen in its in its like 300-year existence, 400-year existence. That the everybody on every side of the political spectrum came down and said, that isn't in the fans' interests. That's in your business interests. We don't think you should do it. We will boycott it. We will. The other football associations were saying any player who competes in that league would not be welcome to compete in our league, even if they play for the same team on both leagues. They were saying that they would dock points from teams that competed in that league, and there's this sudden recognition that actually, if you present monopoly capital, if you present unfair power relationships in terms that have real impact on people, then you can organise mass movements about it. And we just have failed to do that online, and have allowed ever sort of creeping loss of autonomy and loss of freedom for people because we haven't clearly communicated the benefits.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons why I'm so bullish on Nextcloud, because I think people are starting to realize the dangers of having their data tied up in a cloud provider, especially people who get rid of their iPhone and get an Android phone, or vice versa. They're starting to notice that, well, my data isn't in a place where I have access to it. But the problem becomes, how do we get Nextcloud into the hands of normal people? It's easy. I have a Nextcloud instance. I think you have a Nextcloud instance, or you can have one easily if you want one. I'm sure anyone in the chat can easily have a Nextcloud instance, but my grandmother can't have a Nextcloud instance.
And so the person I've seen who is doing most to enable that at the moment, people, is Laura Kalbag and Aral Bakan. With their what do they call it? Is it Own Web?
Small Web Foundation.
Small Web Foundation, yes. And they've got to the point where, like, setting up a Hugo blog or an Owncast video or podcast streaming thing is log into your Linux server and run a single command, and you then have like an automatically self-updating like snap with your Hugo blog or with your podcast on it, and that is way better than it has been historically. You still have the log into your Linux server bit that is going to put a lot of people off, but I'm very excited by the direction that they're taking.
Yeah, this is one of the things actually that I hope my own business endeavors will result in. I guess a final point to follow up on this thing where I've noticed recently that the free alternatives are better in a lot of ways. I recently had cause to play with home security stuff, and I thought I didn't have time up north to order the right cameras and set up my ZoneMinder installation and things like that. But there is a world in which a provider could provide, like when you go to the big box electronics store and you buy an Arlo kit, which is what I ended up doing, and it's complete fucking garbage. the app doesn't work very well. The cameras are very flaky. The software is complete garbage. Um, but you can go to the store, buy the box, take it home, unplug it, set it up, and it sort of kind of mostly does what it says it will do. With a little bit more work, if you already have the box running ZoneMinder, you can do the thing. So I'm hoping that at some point in the next 5 years, there's a market to sell, to be able to make it my full-time job, to be able to say, here is a home automation system where the data doesn't leave your house. And I think that that's a thing that people are very interested in. There've been a lot of naughty videos being shared around the internet from these security camera providers being hacked.
Yeah.
And I think that I think we're on the cusp of people saying, look, how do I get a situation where all of my own data is in my own house? And we just need, and I'm doing the software developer thing. I'm saying we just need. I realize it's a lot of work, and I'm hoping to be able to do it. But we just need someone to put the effort in making this easy to set up and install for normal people that don't have IT backgrounds. And the software is almost there. I've done some work on Nextcloud to make it easy to make it easy to set up for small organizations. They still need Nextcloud to be installed for it. But once it's installed, they can usually administer it themselves, because one of the benefits is people have grown accustomed to using a web interface to administer their gear. So I think there's something there. I'm hoping that becomes my I'm hoping that can become my full-time job in the next 5 years. But right now, we've got all these problems, and we recognize them a lot more than normal people do. So it's a matter of awareness and making sure that our solutions are technically better.
Yeah, so I just want to follow up on something Matthew Scarlett said in chat. Is it just that people care more about sport than they ever will care about computers? I mean, yes, they do, but that in itself is a communication breakdown. Like, over the last year, how have you watched sport? Either you have watched it on the internet, through Facebook live streaming, or through Twitch, or through Netflix, or through some other online content provider, or you have watched it on your TV, which is through the internet, through some live streaming service. Like, how have you discussed the sports fixtures? You haven't been going to the pub and talking about the match in the pub round the corner from the arena after the match finished. You've been hopping on Zoom and talking about it there. Like, with all these sort of video assist technologies, how do you trust that the referee's decisions are being fair if you don't know how those VAR techniques work? There's a bunch of situations where computers intersect with the sports going community in ways that we are not being explicit about.
And so we just have to make it. Yep. Go ahead.
Where the interests of the people who are providing those computers aren't aligned with the interests of the people who are engaging with the sport, is all I was going to say.
Yeah, and further to that, where people's interests are aligned with the technical solutions we can provide, I hope is currently on data privacy and owning your own shit. And that's what I'm hoping is the case anyway. Yeah, it's possible that people have given up.
Well, and that I don't think they have, because Apple is still banging on about this, and that means there's money in it.
Right.
And also, but also that is a key part of autonomy. Freedom is one thing, but sort of security and safety is another. So it all comes back down to this idea of being an autonomous and independent agent online. Good. Calendar app. Greg Casamento got in touch since the last episode to say that the problems we had with fields not being editable in Gorm was a problem in Gorm that he intends to take a look at. So thank you very much, Greg, for offering to do that. And that if we run into those problems again, the solution is to remove the control and re-add it and reset up the outlets. It's modern Gorm expects there to be a sort of lookup table of the objects in the Gorm file, and the and old versions of Gorm didn't construct that table. So if the Gorm file is old enough, and this the project hasn't been touched in about 11 years, I think. If the Gorm file is old enough, then it doesn't contain that table, and so new Gorm doesn't know how to work with it.
Right. Okay. It's really helpful, the assistance and interaction we're getting from the stream on these problems that we run into.
Yeah, definitely, and great to have sort of the chief maintainer of GNUstep helping us with our GNUstep problems. You can't
Definitely.
You can't ask for more sort of personalized service than that.
So, what do we want to do? Do we want to delete those objects and recreate them? Do we want to carry on with our previous hacking?
If I remember, we didn't particularly get very far at all.
We did not.
We were going to add a field. Oh yes. So what we were talking about was how to better allow people to set the start and end times of their event, because we noticed that you couldn't do multiple day events. So you couldn't do all day events that were longer than one day, and you couldn't do like fixed start and end time events that were longer than one day either. And so we came up with two ideas. One was to replicate the start time UI as end time, and the other was to, which looks like the one that we ended up doing, was to allow you to change the duration of the time that you were entering from hours to minutes or hours or days or whatever. And we did neither, because partly because of this bug that Greg was talking about, and partly because we chased a rabbit down a hole of trying to use Zen Estate Picker in a Gorm file, which turned out to be a non-starter direction to go down.
Right. So where do we go from here?
I'm kind of thinking git reset hard, and then start solving the problem again.
That's always my preferred way to work.
Nice. Okay, so what we want to do is one of those two tasks, I guess. Shall we continue with the pop-up menu and the units picker one?
I think so, but I'm not married to it.
Okay. Well, we may as well take some direction on this thing, so let's go for that one. I'm going to launch Gorm from up here so that we don't get G workspace overfilling over all my shit. So yeah, here's what we currently have. We have the start time, which is a slider, because this is actually a fairly old school interface. So start time is a slider, and then duration is a number of currently hours, and then a slider to change that. And so I think what we're talking about is putting the slider there, putting the units there. That doesn't look the same as the one above. That's better. And then replacing that with the pop-up button, right?
Yes, I think that's the easiest way to go about it.
Sure. So let's start the get rid of that process. Let's start the change process by getting rid of that thing. Apparently neither delete nor backspace work there. Nope, not going to happen. Oh,
I noticed the same problem when I was doing it as well.
so there is a command there is a command shortcut, but it hasn't printed whatever the character is for the shortcut. So I don't know what the thing is. It isn't command backspace or command delete either.
Those are the two that I would guess. So I guess we don't get to
It
use the
wasn't
command
command
shortcut.
D. I'm going to use just press the button.
There we go.
We want one of them. That doesn't fit. We can make the slider smaller.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Let's put that alongside the all day thing and then make that bigger to fit. Whoops. Oh dear. There we go. Right.
Okay, and then we need to change the items.
There we go.
There we go.
So what do we want to do? Do we want to just do like minutes,
Hours,
days, or hours,
minutes,
days, weeks?
hours, days. Hours I don't like. But so minutes, and maybe days, and maybe weeks.
Okay, but now we're losing the one thing you could do before.
Yeah, so maybe minutes, hours, days is better.
We can, of course, add menu items to this menu, but it's way easier.
Definitely.
Just 2, 3. What I'm going to do also is change the tags so that they're all unique. So that's a way to find which item we're looking at.
Perfect.
Okay, so now we have got that pop-up button. We presumably want a
we need an outlet in the controller, I think, right?
Yeah, so we probably want an action for when that thing is changed. Do we also want an outlet? I suppose we do, because if you want to edit an appointment, you need to know how to set that thing. So yeah, we do. We want one of each. So in appointment editor, we've got all of these outlets. I will
We
add
want to add duration units, I think we called it.
Nice. And we have actions. And it's probably going to be called like select duration units. Right, cool. So now that thing, oops, no, let's not, we want the instance of appointment editor, which is that thing. This will have duration units. Wrong way around. I always do that in this tool. Oh, and now that's not showing me the things. Right, let's try that again. Connect that to there. Duration units connect. And now I would like to see that. Right, now this one does need to be done this way around. Target. Select duration units.
Okay, this is a bit of Gorm that always confuses me slightly.
Yeah, because I think that with the Xcode interface builder now, it'll let you do it in any direction. You can, drag, control drag a line from one object to another, and it will show you the things that can be done to connect those two objects.
Right.
Whereas NextStep had a source and destination. I have a little anecdote here. I got into because I had been drinking beer before I saw him talk. I got into an argument with Ted Nelson, the Project Xanadu, uh, just like sort of academic, over. He said that no user interface in the history of like GUIs had ever shown lines connecting two different windows, and I said that one had, and that was NextStep's interface builder, which actually had a line that came from this object to this object.
Yep.
And the reason that this is S and T with these little things and not a line in GNUstep, and the reason that nobody else ever did that is because Next patented. Yeah, because this was in the days of look and feel patents.
Oh.
They patented drawing lines between windows, and so nobody else had that. And now nobody is innovating in GUI design, so nobody will add it.
Right.
But he swore blind that he had seen NextStep Interface Builder, and it couldn't draw lines. And I had a Mac laptop with Rhapsody, and so after a bit of yes you can, no you can't, yes you can, no you can't, got my laptop out and drew a line between two windows.
Was he Sir Ted Nelson at that point?
No, he wasn't. No.
All right.
And if I had my
okay, so
no, I'm joking.
Okay, so we've done the Gorm bits.
Almost. We still have to for the appointment editor class. We now have to regenerate the header because
Right.
we have added that outlet in action. But actually, that's a dangerous thing to do because I don't know how this is going to merge it in. So what I'm going to propose is just adding them in Emacs before we try to load this file.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a bit of
That
a sort
sounds
of
reasonable.
safety first approach. I have fixed the Emacs thing, but Emacs itself is slightly broken. We're now using GNUstep Emacs, so it has the GNUstep menu, but for some reason doesn't draw the icon bar.
That's amusing.
And it is still entirely usable.
Emacs doesn't need much to be usable.
Which is good because it doesn't have much. Appointment editor. Oh, it is there. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, GNUstep, which Greg says, sorry you're late. Don't worry, we have already, we have literally only just started coding. We've already used the information you sent us on why Gorm was being a bit tricky to get going in Gorm. So we should now have a hooked up picker. We should probably implement select duration units and just do something just to show that we are.
Yeah, we can implement it here. I'll do that part.
Yep.
Let's see here. I'm just gonna. Oops.
I'm just going to take a comfort break while you do some typing.
And I'm gonna. Oops. I can't find the font. Maybe that's why it's not drawing the icons. So, oops. Seems to have, oh, well. Emacs has decided that it does not want to run any longer. So, I will restart it and make sure that I'm not muted so you can hear me talking to my screen. GNUstep application, SimpleAgenda. And then I will find appointment editor. Let me find, it looks like it's going to crash again. So over here, oh, maybe not. It is complaining about the fonts, and I think that's what it's about to crash. Can I just get Emacs to piss off for a minute? And I cannot. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to see if MG is available. It is not. Emacs Knox. Oh, that gives me the old GTK Emacs, which is acceptable because it will not crash on me. Appointment editor implementation. And I'm going to open the header file so I can just copy that line out. I like to copy the, there we go. Oh, you must be back because I heard the click of your mic. So the GNUstep Emacs has crashed.
Oh, nice.
And it started drawing some things. It can't find a font is what it's complaining about.
Okay.
And so I'm just going down here to select frequency, and I'm going to implement select duration units under it. Can I do have, oh, I need some curly braces from you, please. And then let's just do nslog. Hang on here. What do we want to nslog here? We want to nslog the value of the sender, right? Which is the 012.
So that should be the tag, the sender tag, if the sender is a menu item rather than the button. But yeah, we probably do want to log that so that we can, what we want to log is the sender.
Right. Okay. There we go. Can I do it this way, or do I have to make the?
You would be better off using a string literal.
Okay, let's do that, and it's %x.
%at.
Right. %at. And I need a semicolon and close curly. There we go. And now we can run that.
Yeah, let me just, before we
I'm just going to quit this Emacs. Oh, go ahead. There we go.
Yeah, we, as Greg says, we are using the GNUstep version of Emacs, or we tried, but it did manage to draw some stuff before it bombed out.
It drew the icons, but it was complaining about missing fonts. So
yeah, right.
Yeah, Greg says %x is hexadecimal. Yeah, I forget what they are from time to time, and I knew there was a special one for the object thing. So if you just hit Control-C or background,
do you want to kill that, or okay?
Yeah, we can just kill it. Oh, whoops. Yep, there we go.
What we can also probably do is that.
I didn't know you could do that with xkill. That is cool.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so let's build that, and we run it gmake, I think, right? And then we run, it's in the build folder.
I think it's in obj. Actually, no, it might just be SimpleAgenda.app at the top level. Yes, SimpleAgenda.app.
And it didn't like that.
No, this
Something
is
popped up.
no,
and it
this is the
stopped.
thing that we talked about on the last episode.
Oh,
So two
right.
things are: one, when you use GOpen, it has to launch GWorkspace first,
Oh
which
shit!
adds
Sorry
to
about that.
adds to the time. But the other is that there's this thing where something has linked a different version of GNUstep base. So I think it is loading GNUstep base and it is loading a plugin that is also loading GNUstep base. They're getting two different versions, and so we're getting this
Right.
duplicate class for every class in GNUstep base. That is a setup problem on this computer that I haven't yet diagnosed.
Okay, so I'm just going to go into the event new task.
No, you want your appointment. We were
Nope,
working on the appointment editor.
appointment. And then I will select, whoops, cars.
Okay, so we're getting the pop-up button
Right.
as the sender, which means that we're not getting the menu item. So we need to use the pop-up buttons API to work out what the selected item is.
Okay, so let's do that. We can quit SimpleAgenda. I
You
will.
can quit.
Can I quit
Yeah.
GWorkspace? Yes.
Yeah, if you
There
want
we
to
go.
load SimpleAgenda.app the short way, you just do.
Right, run it from the resources, right.
Yeah.
The executable is in there. Right. So, so we need to get use NS pop-up button to get the menu item.
Actually.
It would also not hurt, I suppose, to log duration units to see if it updated that.
It won't have done because we haven't implemented the action method.
Oh, right. Yep, it's not automatic, right? Okay, so I do not know the API for NS pop-up button. Let me take a quick look.
So there is a selected item. There is also a selected tag, and because we define separate tags for each thing, so if we change this to send a selected tag. And Mob.1 says you can use open app.
Right. Okay, and Greg says that only if GWorkspace is installed, GOpen generally uses the NS workspace to pull in whatever you're trying to open, which makes sense. Okay, so let's go over here to new appointment. Oops. And that got 0, and that got 1, and that got 2.
Nice.
So this is behaving as expected. So we can quit that. And then I suppose we can.
And Greg is definitely not commenting too much at all. Like we definitely
Absolutely
benefit
not.
from having the experts on hand while we're doing this.
Definitely. So here, I can access duration units this way, right?
Yeah.
I need an equal sign.
Oh, okay.
It's just necessary. There we go. And sender selected tag.
Yeah, now I think that is a perfectly cromulent way to implement that method, and that we should also define an enumeration somewhere that documents that the values are 0 means minutes,
Yep.
1 means hours, and 2 means days.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. Where do you want to do that? Top of file?
Yeah, just top of this file for now, because we don't know that we need it anywhere else yet.
I can't get to the top of the file easily.
Okay.
Let's do this. My meta key doesn't work.
Mine does.
All right, there we go. And then here we can just make a static enum duration units.
It probably doesn't need to be stored at all, so you probably don't need static keyword.
Oh, you're right. Duration units. I need some curly braces. And what do we say? Hours.
That is minutes, hours, and weeks. Minutes, hours, and days.
Minutes, hours, days. And then can you close that up? There we go. Okay. And that enum start at 0, right?
Yeah. So that is
Yeah,
all
okay. So-
implicitly not 1 and 2.
Right. Okay. So that's good. And then
Could I make
Um,
the
yep.
suggestion that we actually just commit now, because
definitely.
we've because then when next week we've forgotten what we do and we just revert and start again, we'll have made some forward
That's
progress.
good because I am watching the clock now. So
Yeah,
that's an excellent point. We should probably build it since we did make a change
Oh yeah.
and double check.
Interesting.
Oh, incompatible ID.
There's something we can do with that. But no, right. Yes, we have. Duration units is the outlet.
Right. Oh, yes.
So we need a model parameter for that. Or really a controller parameter.
Right. Okay.
So we probably want something that's on the event that is going to change its duration.
Yes.
And it's got a duration.
Right. We were going to calculate the duration and store it in duration because the model has everything we need. So we were going to do some maths to convert the duration we had to the duration in the event, because what we found was that if we had a thing that started at noon and ran for 24 hours, it would actually pass over into the next day. So everything was already there. Yeah. So let's put a comment in their method.
I was going to say exactly the same, because I know that you need to finish in a couple of minutes. Let's just write a comment here, commit everything, and then include that comment, because we can always amend it in later.
Yes. So what do we want to do here? We want to calculate the duration and store it on the event. Calculate the duration using the units and store it on the event. There we go.
Okay, cool.
And we should commit that. Yep. All right, let's commit that.
Yep.
So let's take a look at the diff quickly. We've added duration units. And that is basically it. Mm-hmm. Good. So git commit sham add duration units.
After you've typed the message and before you hit enter, I want to modify this git command a bit.
Okay. Add duration units to the appointment editor. Go ahead. StephenRBaker.com.
Oh, okay, yep.
Yep. Perfect. And then GitHub shows that up as both of us, which is
really exactly neat. Because I committed and you.
Oh, and I forgot to add. There we go. Did that add the tests and the log and stuff? It did not. Perfect.
We also did that on master. So.
That's Oh, right. We don't own this project, so we probably need to make a branch.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I have to split. I have another thing in 2 minutes.
Okay, so in that
So-
case, we will. I will patch up the Git branch over the next before the next stream. Thank you everyone for joining us. Apologies for the audio problems earlier. If that continues to be an issue, apparently it's better if you look on our RTMP player at rtmp.objcretain.com. Please like and subscribe. And thank you very much. We will see you again next week.
All right. See you next week. Thank you.